Our next item is the induction of John Honig, who so many of you I know remember fondly. Kathy Peters has written the introduction for John, and unfortunately she couldn't be here tonight either. Actually, we all thought we might wear masks for all these people, and he would know. John's record of service and just his way of being was an incredible contribution to the CC of A and the world of collies. Kathy wrote the introduction. She insisted that I read it to you, and I will. And then what we have is an interview that Hal Sundstrom did with John Honig. So the best way to learn about John is really to have him tell you his story. And you get a real sense of who he was and how he was. So let me read you what Kathy has written. Tonight, John Honig joins the rank of our past luminaries into the Quarter Century Collie Hall of Fame. It is difficult to come to terms with what we have lost. Much can be said about the man, his legacy, and his many talents. John Honig came into the world of collies as a novice, just like the rest of us. A fast learner and a very determined and unique individual, he quickly gained prominence in the Collie Club of America. He held every CC of A office, from district director, president, secretary, director at large, and served as the AKC delegate for the Worcester County Kennel Club as well. John was a great problem solver, diplomat, and mediator. Always courteous, and a gentleman, whether it be judging dogs or attending CC of A functions. His driving force kept the club together during many crises with common sense and intelligent solutions. To whom did we turn in the time of a major crisis? It was John Honig, of course. And he would find a pragmatic way to settle disputes in a timely fashion. John began his affair with collies in the mid-1950s, acquiring champion windswept Domino Jack, whom he successfully campaigned to best in the East during that era. Later, Jack was retired from the show ring after winning Best of Breed under Dorothy Long at the Westminster Kennel Club. We hate to admit we have favorites, but secretly we do. And Domino Jack was John's favorite collie of all time. The next great dogs owned by Acalia were international champion Stony Kirk Reflection and his daughter, champion Mayline Welcome Reflection. This father and daughter team are remembered to this day for winning Best of Breed and Best of Opposite Sex at the 1962 CC of A National in Pikesville, Maryland. John was a teacher and a mentor, if you were willing to listen. He told it like it was, like it or not. As a lead speaker in the 1970s at the annual Conius Collie Colleges, John's talks were like the Sermon on the Mount and would leave the audience clamoring for more. In the scheme of things, John's professional judging career began around 1968, starting with collies and shelties, and he quickly gained respect, catapulting from there to judging many breeds 5 groups, and finally Best in Show. As time passed, John reduced his kennel to 2 older dogs and cut down on his judging assignments. He never lost his love or interest in collies or the Collie Club of America. He always said, there is a time to come and a time to go. Kathy Peters. So now we're going to see an interview by Hal Sundstrom, and it'll give you a true sense of what John Honig was like.
John, the year was 1956, as I understand it. How did it begin?
It began that Evelyn decided that she needed a dog for the kids, and we always loved collies, so we bought a pet collie. And I think Evelyn later wants to discuss that with you. She wants to talk about it, and she'll tell you all the story as to the beginning of our first collie.
Well, perhaps a very useful thing to begin with is the establishment of your line.
Okay, the line came together quite accidentally. We decided that we wanted to get a show dog, and we had Glenn Twyford, who was very helpful to us, and who sold us a blue male, Wind Calls Gunsmoke, who had had 1 major, and he shipped him to us. We showed the dog. The very first show that we showed him was in Baltimore, and we were competing against a very famous dog, Noego's Ricochet, who was a champion. Ed Myers was the judge. We had no show experience. Jack Warren, our handler, showed Gunner, and we went winner's dog and best of winners. This was a major, and the dog was finished, first show. But we were very upset and very disappointed because the champion beat us for the breed, and we felt like we had lost. So since then we learned that this was great. The next thing that happened is we bred Gunsmoke to a female that we had, and we produced a beautiful litter, and out of this litter we got our first homebred champion, Champion Achilles Blue Aspiration. Glenn Twyford, who we had become very friendly with, had asked us if he could send a dog east because there were no majors, and if we would finish him for you, I could come out to Denver and pick out any dog that I liked from his dogs. He sent us, who subsequently became champion, Wind Calls Wacoon, who we finished and sent back to Glenn. At Christmas time, when I had vacation, Glenn invited me to come up to Denver. Glenn had a big old turkey farm that he lived on, with large barns and very, very interesting research things like hamsters of any color, that he was color breeding like collies. It was a very educational and wonderful experience. Glenn really was our mentor. Glenn likes to sleep late, and I'm an early riser. So early in the morning, I got up while Glenn was still asleep, and I went into the large barn where Glenn had many, many dogs. I sat quietly and just watched them. They were not that used to people, but they were friendly but distant. I saw a tricolor, 6 months old tricolor female that caught my eye, and I finally got her to come to me, and I put on a collar and a leash, and I took her out and played with her and leash broke her in the driveway. When Glenn woke up, I told him that I really liked that little tri-bitch. And Glenn said, "Look, John, you can get somebody older and somebody more advanced from me. You don't have to just take a 6 months old puppy." And I said, "No, I'm very happy, Glenn. I'd like to take this puppy." And subsequently, I took her, and that became Champion Wind Calls Tar and Feathers, who was one of the foundation bitches of our kennel. Glenn Twyford's dogs basically were Tocallan, if you wanted to know the bloodline. Jack Warren, who was handling for us at the time, told us that a lady by the name of Shirley Blanton had a wonderful dog, champion Windswept Domino Jack, who was at that point 5 years old and not in excellent condition, and she wanted to sell him. We went to see him, and there was this magnificent dog in terrible condition, skin and bone, dull coat, but there was no overlooking the quality of the dog. We bought the dog, and it took us close to a year to get the dog into condition with hookworm, whipworm, and whatever else you can think of. He came into magnificent condition and coat. He was a cross between Tocallan and Sterling. We subsequently showed the dog, and the dog became one of the top winners, which I'm sure we'll discuss later. He won against large competition at the Garden and many other very important shows. We went to Collie Club of Long Island to a specialty, and there was a lady there who had a son of Domino Jack's bred to his mother. It was a small dog, a small edition of Domino Jack, beautiful expression. The dog was Windswept Renegade. She told us that the dog didn't want to live, he wouldn't eat, he wouldn't do this. So we said, fine, would you like to sell the dog? She says, well, I paid $100 for him, but I'm going to put him to sleep. I said, please don't put him to sleep, here's $100, and I took him home. Subsequently, it took us again quite a number of months to get him rid of all his worms. The dog became a wonderful outgoing dog, a terrific eater, and actually was very, very valuable to us in breeding because he was really very inbred Domino Jack. A little later, we met a wonderful lady, Priscilla Alden, from Stonykerk, and subsequently we were very fortunate. She sold us Stonykerk Reflection. Champion Stonykerk Reflection became one of the top winning dogs, a dog that we had an awful lot of fun with. He won about 12 Best in Shows, 2 of which were national specialties, 1 of which he won with his daughter, Champion Mayerline Welcome Reflection, and I think Evelyn will talk about that later again when we get to shows. So basically, our line came together from Tocallan, Sterling, and Aachen. Priscilla's dogs were very heavily Aachen. All together, then we bred from all of these dogs, and that is where our line developed. Basically, as far as I'm concerned, Aachen was the start of most of the lines, and actually Tocallan was Mrs. Browning's selection, or Glenn's selection, of Aachen-type dogs that they bred, and Ed Pickard, who had Sterling, basically selected what he liked also from Aachen. So actually, there aren't as many bloodlines as people make believe because they all draw together. That is basically how we started and how we kept going, and subsequently we had about approximately 17 champions. We never showed that much, and of which about 8 or 9 were homebred, and the balance were dogs that we had bought for foundation purposes. That basically is how our line got together.
Good summary, John. Could you tell us, who do you and Evelyn consider to be your mentors? We've all had help starting out in the breed.
Our biggest mentor was Glenn Twyford. I would say a big mentor was Jack Warren, who was our first handler. Frank Ashby, who also handled for us. And then the biggest mentors were the collie public. Now, how would they do that? We used to go to bench shows, and we sat on the benches. And it was pretty boring, you know, you sit 4 or 5 hours on a bench. The show only took a few minutes. So what we all did is we talked to each other, we compared dogs, we swapped stories, and so on. So actually you were learning at each show without even knowing that you did. And you were able to compare, you were able to see results, and people really helped each other education-wise, because in order to get something from somebody else, you had to give something. So we were swapping back and forth whatever experiences we had, and pretty soon you no longer know where you learned what. For instance, I know that Frank Ashby taught me head trimming and Jack Warren. Mary Kittredge taught me how to trim feet, how you push the pads back and cut across the nails. Other people showed me how you make sure that puppies' ears grow correctly. And slowly you learned. And it's very, very difficult to point out individual mentors, but Glenn Twyford definitely was our biggest mentor.
So you established a line. You mentioned some of the helpers.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that concurrently, perhaps parallel, you got active in collie clubs. How did this start?
Okay. In the time when we started, which was in the 50s, the way you started to learn, you joined your local collie club. That was a main thing that was more important in those days than going to shows. Because at the club, you learned. They really were educating. And the club we started with was the Collie Club of Long Island. And we really received an excellent education. It was a tough education because people were very competitive, but you really, really learned. And it was very important not to miss a club meeting, because they were more important than anything else, because you had the most to learn. Subsequently, you decided eventually that if you belonged to a local club, that you maybe should join the national club to get all the material that they had. So we subsequently, in the late 50s, joined the Collie Club of America, and we've been members ever since.
Now, you served as the secretary of the Collie Club of America for some 23 years. You were a president for 2 years, back in the days when you could not serve more than 2 successive years. You currently are a director at large, in which capacity you will continue to serve until 1996, I believe.
Correct.
The expiration
Yes.
of that term. How did this come about, John?
Okay, I started out as a district director in Long Island prior to 1966. I would say it was probably 1964, 1965. I felt, the reason that I got involved is that I felt that the breed was giving me a lot, and I felt that you had to constructively pay back. And the way to pay back in anything is by work. Subsequently, I ran for president after completing my term as district director. I was nominated for the office of president and ran for same and was elected. I had 2 successive years. I was re-elected, so I served, I believe it was 1966 and 1967 that I served as president. During that time, the office of secretary was a giant chore, because a secretary was trying to do everything, and subsequently a lot of things did not get done, and it was sort of a mix-up. I must also point out to you that at the time when I became president, the membership was about 900 people, and they were making it rather difficult for people to join, and I felt that any club that I belonged to had lost all rights of exclusivity, so we opened it up as a service organization. And as you know, we subsequently ended up right now where we have about 3,000 to 3,500 members. And I still feel very strongly that we're a service organization. We're not a social club. Now, during the presidency, I was very upset about the impossibility of how to run the office of secretary, So after finishing my term as president, I decided I was going to run for secretary, straighten out the office, and walk away into the sunset. It didn't work. We straightened out the office of secretary. We broke it into integral parts with assistant secretaries. We had wonderful people helping, and together we straightened out the office of secretary, and subsequently I remained in that office for 23 years, serving with many wonderful presidents, and things really went quite smoothly, and it was a really learning experience for me. I'm sure that I got at least as much out of it as I gave. So that I feel that this was rewarding. If anybody was looking for gratitude, power, whatever that may be, or something great that was going to happen, this is not the case. It was hard work, but it was very satisfying because it got things done. After 23 years in the office of secretary, I felt that I wasn't getting any younger, and it was time that somebody else should be broken in. And I gave 2 years' notice to hopefully be replaced. I asked for volunteers, and finally a very nice lady, Carmen Leonard, came along and said, "John, if you'll help me, teach me how to do this and help me, I would be glad to do it." And that is how it came about that Carmen Leonard took over as secretary. I was elected at that time for director at large. That is a 6-year term, which goes from 1990 to 1996. And all the director at large is, he's a member of the executive committee, so he gets to vote and express his opinion. But actually all a director at large does is he represents districts that do not have a district director. So that's where I'm subsequently, and I'm ready at any time to help, but I'm very happy to have other people really carry on. And I believe there's a time to come and there's a time to go.
Well, John, I'd like to parenthetically add that you've brought to these various offices considerable ability and background. As a chief executive officer of a corporation employing upwards of 600 people, you certainly have developed the skills to work with people. And people management, I think, goes hand in hand with the job of running the Collie Club of America. Now, during these years, during this quarter century and more, you established a reputation as being, I call you John the Mediator.
Thanks.
You've, in addition, most recently served as chairman of the ethics committee.
I still do.
I think it might be useful to dwell a minute or two on ethics.
Okay.
Is there a code of ethics? Is it an enforceable code of ethics? How does it affect us? How does it affect our members?
Let's understand each other first. It is very, very easy to mediate. Usually what you have is you start with two people who don't want to talk to each other. All you have to do is, if you can get these people to talk to each other, you can just stand back and miraculously you'll find that they will solve their own situation. And that is really what it is. All it is you've got to get people to communicate and talk to each other. As to ethics, let's understand the following. We really don't have any power. Why don't we have any power? Let us assume you are a member of the Collie Club of America, and we told you that you can't do such and such, whatever it is. Now, you can very easily say, "Thank you for letting me know, take your membership, do with it whatever you wish, and you are free to continue to do whatever you were doing." So actually, by excluding people out of the club, you don't really serve a purpose. You are better off to keep people in a club and work with them than to throw them out. So all that is, in my opinion, you have to treat everybody equally and courteously, and you have to make sure that they talk to each other. As far as ethics complaints are concerned, there hardly ever is a real ethics case. Most of the time they're disagreements with buyers and sellers, which are not ethics cases. As I've also explained, there are some unethical acts that can be unethical in themselves, but are not CCOA ethics cases. And I think you have to differentiate. What you have to try is not to punish, not to embarrass, but to try the people to work out their problems.
John, you didn't really answer completely what Ed Myers taught you about the standard.
Well, the wonderful thing that I got out of this was that Ed explained to me why everything was in there. He even explained to me some of the things that were left ambiguous. They were ambiguous on purpose because they gave leeway to judges. They gave leeway to breeders. And that it really works and that we should respect the standard is proven in that under this same standard, when I first came into the breed, we had Roman-nosed dogs, we had cowhock dogs, we had dogs with all kinds of major problems, and they really have disappeared. Many, many of these problems and the severity of them have disappeared, and all of this happened under that standard. So if a wonderful collie evolved under this standard, I absolutely see no reason why we should touch it. I think we should live up to it, we should respect it, and it, thank God, has enough ambiguities in it, sorry about that, that you have space to move. By trying to rewrite standards to mathematical proportions, either word-wise or really with math, actually, in my opinion, hurts a breed. And he taught me the respect of the standard and the thought that went into it. I almost feel about the collie standard like I feel about the Constitution of the United States. You have to be extremely careful. Very intelligent and very clever people wrote it, and we have to make sure that we don't louse it up.
John, of what are you most proud about the Collie Club of America?
I think you're going to be surprised at my answer. What I'm proudest about is that from a social club with cliques fighting each other, we became a large organization of people getting along together, of being open as a service organization, that we provide service to anybody, and that we try not to have handled it on a personal basis. And I would like it to remain this way, that we are a service club. We are not a police organization. We are not a social club. We are there to enjoy our hobby and to help each other enjoy it. What I am also very proud about is that while keeping everything on an even keel, collies have actually improved. Now, when I say that collies have improved, you had some very outstanding collies in the olden days, and you had some horrible ones, and you had a very small middle class. Today, I would say it is very difficult to get the real top ones, but the whole bottom has gone, and you have now a very, very large group of better mediocrity, of dogs that are reasonably good, that the average of them is reasonably good. So I'm very proud of that we all helped to bring the breed up to that. Of course, all that we did, what I'm proud of is that I helped provide the environment to allow our members to do this. And I sincerely hope that not much emphasis should be put on the administration of the club. That is incidental. That's like taking out the garbage. Important is what we do with the breed. Important is that we help each other. Important is that we learn.
This brings me to a logical part of this interview. This is a perfect opportunity to discuss your views as a judge.
Now, I have been judging dogs for about close to 25 years, and I am approved by the American Kennel Club to judge 5 groups. I judge all groups except sporting and hounds. That means I judge herding, working, terriers, toys, non-sporting, Have I gotten 5, Hal? What am I missing? Herding, working, non-sporting, toys and terriers.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
that's
You
5.
got it.
The only 2 that I'm not doing is sporting and hounds, and to be very honest with you, my aim is to just get better in the ones that I'm doing, and I'm not really looking to do any more breeds than that.
As a follow-on, John, what are your impressions? You say you've judged for a quarter of a century. What are your impressions of today's purebred dogs versus yesterday?
There are some breeds that have advanced, there are some breeds that have badly deteriorated. And that has to do with the popularity of the breed. Very often when a breed becomes popular and people jump into the breed for short periods of time, produce a lot of dogs, you get an awful lot of junk. Today also, there is the following. We were interested when we first started, when I say we, I don't mean me, I mean everybody, to produce good dogs on a continuing basis. Today, there are many people, they buy a dog and they want to win with this dog. They buy this dog like they buy a computer quick pick at the lottery and hope that they're going to win the jackpot. What the jackpot is, I never found out, even when you win, but that's another story. They are willing to win at any cost, and they're not really interested in the quality of their dog. See, a lot of us, years ago, sat at shows and we wanted to see, are we doing the thing right? How do our dogs honestly compare with the other one? And if the other one was better, how did these guys do this? And how can I do it? You see, and today that isn't the case. Today is let's find a judge that maybe doesn't know anything, will put us up. So I don't have an answer to this. This is present in a lot of the breeds. You see a tremendous amount of artificial things being done. Collies are sculpted, they're painted, their faces are painted, all kinds of repairs are done on them, which you can or cannot prove. The people are actually cheating themselves, because if they're going to go on breeding, but many don't, this will repeat and repeat and repeat, and it's going to be a curse that's going to stay with them. So I tell you, I feel sometimes that I'm out of touch, because I don't really understand exactly what is going on. And this is not only in collies. This whole thing has become a competition. It's a matter of, they might enjoy racing turtles. It's the same thing. It's the idea your turtle should win. Doesn't matter. They're not interested in turtles. They're interested in their turtle going across the finish line.
Thank you, John and Evelyn, and thank you, Wendy, and thank you for sharing the Acalia experience with us.
Thank you for visiting with us. We really enjoyed your visit. As we sit here at the ocean and we look out at the ocean with waves rolling in and waves rolling out, we see the distant horizon. You can't but help to think about the past and future of collies, which I am sure will be, past was okay, I'm sure the future will be. And I wish you all a very happy and successful life.
Gets me every time. Okay, so now you have a sense of John and why he's welcomed into the Hall of Fame. I mean, wish he was here today.